I never thought my husband would ask me to betray him. But there I was, standing in our living room, his best friend's eyes burning into mine while Ryan watched from across the room, smiling. "I want this," he said, his voice calm but firm. My heart pounded as Owen stepped closer. I knew I should stop, but Ryan's words echoed in my head. And then, I let it happen. My name is Emily, and I thought I had the perfect marriage. Ryan and I met in college, fell in love fast, and built a life that others envied. He was charming, confident, and always made me feel like the most beautiful woman in the room. For the first few years, everything was perfect. We traveled, laughed, and dreamed about the future. Ryan was my rock, steady, dependable, and fiercely protective. But over time, things began to shift. Ryan's job started demanding more of his time, leaving me alone more often than not. The late nights, the business trips, it all became routine. I told myself it was normal, that every couple goes through phases. But the loneliness crept in. I started longing for connection, for passion, the kind we used to have before life became so predictable. Then came Owen. He was Ryan's best friend, the fun, laid-back type who always knew how to make me laugh. We'd known each other for years, and I'd always thought of him as harmless. Until one night, Ryan brought up something that changed everything. We were having drinks, and Ryan was unusually quiet. After a long silence, he said something I never expected. "Do you ever think about being with someone else?" I laughed at first, thinking it was a joke. But Ryan's eyes were serious. "What do you mean?" I asked. He leaned closer, his voice low. "I mean, what if it wasn't cheating? What if I wanted you to?" The air in the room shifted. I thought he was testing me, but he wasn't. He said he trusted me, that he wanted to explore something different, something exciting. And when he mentioned Owen's name, my heart stopped. It started as a game, a fantasy Ryan said we could control. But the moment Owen looked at me differently, something real ignited. I told myself it was just curiosity. I told myself it would never go too far. But deep down, I knew I was playing with fire. And it was only a matter of time before everything burned. After that night, everything changed. Ryan's words echoed in my head. "What if I wanted you to?" At first, I thought it was just talk, some harmless fantasy he wanted to explore. But the more I thought about it, the more I saw the cracks in our marriage. Ryan had always been confident, even possessive at times. So why would he suddenly suggest something so dangerous? I convinced myself it was nothing more than a passing thought. But then Owen started showing up more often. He lingered in the kitchen after dinner, helping me clean up while Ryan sat in the living room, pretending not to notice. He found reasons to brush against me, his hand on my lower back, his fingers grazing mine when he passed me a glass. And Ryan didn't stop him. In fact, he seemed to enjoy it. One night, as I poured wine for the three of us, Ryan leaned in and whispered, "Do you like the attention?" His question sent chills down my spine. "What are you talking about?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He just smirked. "I see the way he looks at you. And I see the way you look back." I froze, my cheeks burning. "Ryan." "It's okay," he interrupted, his voice low. "I told you I want this." I laughed nervously, but his expression didn't change. "You're serious?" I asked. He nodded. "I want to see it happen. I want to know you still crave passion as much as I do." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Was this some kind of test? Was he bored? Or did he really want this? The questions swirled in my mind, but before I could ask them, Owen walked in. "Everything okay?" he asked, his eyes flickering between us. "Perfect," Ryan replied, smiling. But I felt anything but perfect. The tension only grew from there. Owen started coming over more frequently, and the flirting became impossible to ignore. One night, while Ryan was outside grilling, Owen cornered me in the kitchen. "You know he's watching us, right?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I tried to laugh it off, but he stepped closer. "Tell me," he said, "is this what you want too? Or are you just going along with it because he asked you to?" I swallowed hard, my pulse racing. "I don't know," I admitted. And it was the truth. Because part of me was terrified, but another part of me felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. That night, Ryan poured more drinks than usual, and the conversation turned dangerous. He asked Owen about his past relationships, about what he wanted in a woman. And when Owen's eyes met mine, something shifted. Ryan noticed. And instead of stopping it, he encouraged it. By the time Owen left, my head was spinning. Not from the alcohol, but from the way Ryan had watched us all night, like he was waiting for something to happen. And deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before it did. The moment it finally happened, I told myself it wasn't real. It started innocently enough, Or at least, that's what I tried to believe. Ryan had invited Owen over again, just like he'd been doing for weeks. The three of us had drinks, laughed, and shared stories. But this time, the tension felt heavier, charged with something unspoken. Ryan kept making comments, subtle at first. "Emily, you look incredible tonight," he said as his eyes lingered on me. Then, turning to Owen, he added, "Don't you think so?" Owen didn't miss a beat. "Absolutely," he replied, his voice low. My face flushed, but Ryan just smirked, like he knew exactly what he was doing. By the time we moved to the living room, the air felt suffocating. Ryan sat back in his chair, his eyes steady as Owen moved closer to me on the couch. "Relax," Ryan said, pouring another drink. "You're both so tense." His words felt like permission, and I hated how much I wanted it. It started with a touch, Owen's hand brushing against mine as we reached for the same glass. I should have pulled away. I should have stopped it. But I didn't. Instead, I let it linger. Ryan saw it. He didn't look angry or jealous. If anything, he looked pleased. "Don't hold back," he said, his voice steady but dark. "Not tonight." I froze. Was this really happening? Owen hesitated too, searching my face for a sign. And then, as if all the tension from the past few weeks boiled over, he kissed me. It was soft at first, testing, unsure, but then it deepened, and I didn't stop him. Ryan didn't move. He just watched. When the kiss broke, guilt crashed over me like a wave. I pulled back, breathless, and looked at Ryan. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice shaking. His smile unnerved me. "I told you," he said. "I want this." Owen leaned closer, his hand resting on my thigh. And I didn't push it away. The night blurred after that. I told myself it was just a game, something Ryan wanted to experiment with. But the truth was, it didn't feel like a game anymore. Owen's touch felt real. The heat, the hunger, it was real. And as much as I tried to tell myself I was doing this for Ryan, I knew deep down that I wanted it too. But what started as a fantasy quickly spiraled out of control. Ryan began pushing boundaries, encouraging Owen and me to be alone more often. "Go ahead," he'd say, handing me a drink and walking away, leaving us in the same room. "I trust you." But trust had nothing to do with it. Because with each touch, each stolen moment, the lines blurred. Owen stopped being Ryan's friend. He started becoming mine. And that terrified me. One night, after Ryan had fallen asleep, Owen stayed. We sat on the couch, the TV playing in the background, but neither of us paid attention. "This is dangerous," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I know," Owen said, his eyes never leaving mine. "But you don't care, do you?" He didn't answer. Instead, he leaned in, and before I could stop him, or myself, we were tangled together again, this time without Ryan watching. It wasn't part of the game anymore. It was real. And it was wrong. The next morning, the guilt hit hard. I avoided Owen's calls and texts, telling myself it had to end. But Ryan noticed. "You're pulling away," he said, his tone sharp. I tried to deny it, but he saw through me. "You like him, don't you?" he accused. I didn't answer. Because the truth was too dangerous to say out loud. Ryan started changing after that. The confidence he once carried began to crack, replaced by something darker. He started drinking more, throwing out sharp comments whenever Owen's name came up. "You couldn't stop, could you?" he snapped one night. "You told me to." I shot back. "But not like this." The tension between us grew unbearable, but I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't even know if I wanted to. What had started as Ryan's fantasy had turned into my reality. And no matter how much I wanted to stop, it was too late. Because feelings don't go away just because you tell them to. And secrets don't stay buried forever. The night it all fell apart started like any other. Ryan had invited Owen over again, but this time, something felt different. Ryan was quieter, drinking more, and his eyes lingered on me longer than usual. I tried to act normal, but the tension in the room was suffocating. Owen sat next to me on the couch, his leg brushing against mine. The touch sent a shiver down my spine, but instead of pulling away, I let it stay. Ryan noticed. "Why don't you two just admit it?" he said suddenly, his voice sharp. Owen and I froze. "Admit what?" I asked, my voice trembling. Ryan leaned back in his chair, swirling the whiskey in his glass. "That this isn't about me anymore," he said. "It's about you too." I opened my mouth to deny it, but he cut me off. "I see the way you look at each other," he said. "Do you think I'm blind?" Owen shifted uncomfortably, but Ryan's eyes stayed on me. "Did you sleep with him?" The room went silent. Ryan's voice was low, but his words hit like a slap. "Answer me," he shouted, slamming his glass down so hard that it shattered. "Yes." I blurted out, my voice cracking. "But it didn't mean." "Don't," he snapped, standing up. Don't you dare say it didn't mean anything. Owen stood too, stepping in front of me. Ryan, calm down. Don't tell me to calm down, Ryan roared, shoving Owen back. Owen stumbled but held his ground. Back off, Ryan, he warned. Or what? Ryan spat. Before I could stop them, Ryan lunged at Owen, and the two crashed into the coffee table. Glass and furniture splintered as they fought, fists flying and curses filling the air. Stop it! I screamed, trying to pull them apart. But Ryan's rage had taken over. You ruined everything, he shouted, punching Owen so hard that he fell to the floor. I knelt beside Owen, my hands shaking. Are you okay? Ryan's eyes darkened. You're protecting him? I didn't answer, but my silence was enough. Ryan's face twisted with pain and anger. Get out, he said, his voice shaking. Both of you. Ryan. Out. Owen and I left, but the damage was done. I sat in the car, staring out the window while Owen drove. Neither of us spoke. The weight of what had happened pressed down on me, suffocating me. Where do you want me to take you? Owen finally asked. I don't know, I whispered. Because I didn't. I had nowhere to go. The fallout came quickly. Ryan filed for divorce the next day, citing infidelity as the reason. He made sure everyone knew, friends, family, even co-workers. I became the villain. People whispered behind my back, and friends stopped returning my calls. I tried to justify it to myself, to remind myself that Ryan had pushed me into this situation. But it didn't matter. I had crossed a line, and now I was paying the price. Owen tried to be there for me. He said we could start over, that we didn't need Ryan's approval to be happy. But every time I looked at him, I saw the chaos we had caused, the broken trust, the lies, the destruction. It wasn't love. It was guilt. And guilt wasn't enough to build a future on. I ended things with Owen a month later. He didn't fight me. I think he knew deep down that we were never meant to last. I moved out of town shortly after the divorce was finalized. I needed to start over, to escape the whispers and the stares. But no matter how far I ran, I couldn't escape the guilt. I still think about that night. The way Ryan looked at me, the betrayal in his eyes. The way Owen's touch felt right, even when I knew it was wrong. And the way I let everything spiral out of control, convincing myself it was harmless until it was too late. I learned the hard way that some fantasies aren't meant to be lived. They're meant to stay in the dark, untouched and unspoken. Because once you cross that line, there's no going back. The days after the confrontation with Ryan felt like a blur. A series of painful moments that I couldn't escape no matter how hard I tried. I stayed at a motel the first few nights, afraid to face what I had done. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ryan's face, his anger, his hurt, and the look of betrayal that cut deeper than anything he could have said. I wanted to call him, to beg for forgiveness, but what could I possibly say? I had destroyed us. The divorce moved quickly. Ryan didn't fight for reconciliation. He didn't try to understand or forgive. Instead, he let his anger lead, making sure I was labeled as the villain. People took his side, our friends, his family. I became the story everyone whispered about. The unfaithful wife. The woman who betrayed her husband for his best friend. The rumors spread fast, and soon, I couldn't go anywhere without feeling the weight of judgmental stares. Even at work, people treated me differently. I started getting fewer assignments, and my boss suggested I take some time off to clear my head. But we both knew what he really meant. So I quit. Owen tried to stay close. At first, he was my comfort, the only person who didn't judge me. He promised we'd figure it out, that we could leave the past behind and start over. But no matter how much he tried, the guilt never left. I couldn't stop thinking about Ryan, how much I had hurt him, how much I had thrown away for a fleeting moment of passion. And every time I looked at Owen, I saw the mistake we had made. It wasn't love. It was chaos. And deep down, I think Owen knew it too. We ended things quietly, no big fight, no tears. Just an understanding that whatever we had wasn't strong enough to survive the damage we caused. Afterward, I felt more alone than ever. I moved to a small apartment outside the city, hoping a fresh start would help me heal. But no matter how far I ran, the guilt followed me. I avoided people, terrified they would somehow know who I was and what I had done. I thought about reaching out to Ryan, but what could I say? I knew he wouldn't take me back. And even if he did, the damage we had done was irreversible. One night, I broke down completely. I sat on the floor of my empty apartment, clutching my phone, staring at Ryan's name in my contacts. I wanted to call him, to tell him I was sorry, to tell him I still loved him. But I didn't. Because love wasn't enough to erase the betrayal. Therapy became my lifeline. At first, I didn't want to go. I didn't think I deserved help, not after what I'd done. But my therapist didn't judge me. She listened. She helped me see the cracks in my marriage that I had ignored for so long. The loneliness, the disconnect, and the way I let my insecurities drive me into Owen's arms. But most importantly, she made me face the truth. What happened with Owen wasn't just about passion. It was about feeling seen. For the first time in years, someone made me feel wanted. And I let that need consume me. The hardest part was forgiving myself. I spent so much time hating the woman I had become, selfish, reckless, weak. But hating myself didn't fix anything. It didn't undo the past. It didn't rebuild the trust one had shattered. And it didn't make the pain go away. I finally reached out to Ryan months later. Not to ask for forgiveness, but to take responsibility. I told him I was sorry, not just for what I did, but for all the ways I had failed him as a wife. I didn't expect him to respond, but he did. His reply was short but honest. "I don't hate you," he wrote. "But I can't forget." Those words stayed with me. Because forgiveness doesn't always mean forgetting. And love doesn't always survive betrayal. I still think about Ryan and Owen sometimes, not with longing but with regret. I regret the choices I made. I regret the pain I caused. But I also learned from it. I learned that love isn't enough without trust. And desire isn't worth destroying the people you care about. Now, I focus on rebuilding myself, on learning to be happy without someone else defining my worth. Because if there's one thing I know for sure, it's this. No one can fix you. You have to fix yourself. Starting over wasn't easy. There were days I wanted to disappear, to run so far away that no one would ever recognize me again. But no matter how far I went, I couldn't outrun my guilt or myself. I had to face what I'd done. I had betrayed my husband, broken my vows, and shattered a friendship. And for what? A moment of passion? A thrill that faded as quickly as it ignited? No, it was more than that. It wasn't about Owen. It was about the emptiness I had been trying to fill. The loneliness, the need to feel wanted, and the desperation to escape a marriage that had started to feel more like a prison. But the truth is, no one else could have fixed what was broken inside me. I had to do that myself. Therapy helped me unravel the reasons behind my actions. I realized I had ignored my own needs for years, sacrificing my happiness to keep my marriage intact. I had buried my frustrations, pretended I was okay, and convinced myself that love meant settling for less. And when someone finally noticed me, when Owen made me feel alive again, I let my guard down and made the biggest mistake of my life. But mistakes don't define us. What defines us is what we do after. I learned how to take responsibility, not just for my actions but for my feelings. I stopped blaming Ryan for the distance in our marriage and started asking myself why I hadn't spoken up sooner. Why hadn't I fought harder for us? Why hadn't I been honest about what I needed? The answers weren't easy to face, but they were necessary. Because the truth is, our marriage had been broken long before Owen came into the picture. And instead of fixing it, I let it fall apart. I also learned to forgive myself. For a long time, I carried the shame of what I'd done like a weight on my shoulders. I let it define me, punish me, and keep me from moving forward. But guilt is only useful if it teaches you something. And it taught me that love isn't enough without trust, communication, and effort. It taught me that passion fades, but respect and commitment are what make a relationship last. And it taught me that no amount of desire is worth destroying the people you care about. I don't know if Ryan ever truly forgave me. We don't talk anymore, and maybe that's for the best. But I hope, wherever he is, he found someone who could give him what I couldn't. And I hope Owen learned from this too. Because what we had wasn't love. It was chaos. And chaos doesn't build a future. As for me, I'm still learning. I'm learning to set boundaries, to speak up when something doesn't feel right, and to value myself enough to walk away from situations that don't serve me. I've stopped looking for someone else to fix me. Because the truth is, the only person who can do that is me. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that the line between right and wrong isn't always clear. Sometimes it's blurry. And sometimes we don't see it until we've already crossed it. But no matter how far you've fallen, you can always climb back up. It won't be easy. You'll have to face the pain, the guilt, and the consequences of your choices. But you can rebuild. You can heal. And you can learn to trust yourself again. I'll never forget what happened. It's a scar I'll carry forever. But scars aren't just reminders of pain. They're proof that we survived. And sometimes survival is the first step toward redemption. What would you have done in my situation? Could you forgive betrayal? Or would you let desire lead you down a dangerous path? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more intense stories of love, betrayal, and redemption. The next one will make you question how far you'd go to hold on to happiness.